Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss another looming example of the way Brexiteers are trying to pretend that we can somehow break free of the orbit of the EU, but in actual fact will just demonstrate that we cannot by trying. It's phone chargers this time. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So the EU is going to change their rules to demand that all mobile phones and some other devices adopt the USB-C type charger. Now, in isolation, I'd like this to be the case for everything, basically. I'm sure, like a lot of people, I'm the same in having a lot of devices that need charging, and there's a variety of cables needed for each one. The only C-type device I regularly use is a tablet. I've got another type for my mobile phone. I've got another type that works for my camera and my wireless headset. If they all had the same type, I wouldn't need loads of cables, just a couple in case I needed to charge two at once. And if someone lost their cable, they could borrow someone else's without needing to worry if it's the right sort. What sort of cable have you got? Oh, that's no good. What sort have you got? Oh, no. Harmonisation of things like this just makes sense. But what we have here is a ruling coming from Brussels. Cue the likes of the Daily Mail insisting that the UK will not be going down this path and is trying to stir up Brexit divisions while it does it. But their prediction is very far from the mark. See, they say this would mean that, for example, Apple's Lightning connector would be allowed everywhere in the UK except Northern Ireland. Oh, ridiculous. You'd be able to have this thing in one part of the UK and not in the other part of the UK. That's ridiculous. It's not actually true, though, is it? I mean, it would make sense to you, perhaps. After all, we understand that Northern Ireland retains access to the single market for goods in return for maintaining single market standards. The rest of the UK does not. So yeah, in theory, you have a situation whereby once this rule's in place, these chargers and the devices that require them are allowed in some parts of the country and not others. But that's not what would happen in practice. I mean, first of all, the EU are not banning the chargers. They're just saying that mobile phones and other things for sale in the single market must be made with the C-type chargers. So it applies to newly created goods. So if you've got like an older phone with an older connection, no one's going to take it off you. You don't have to turn it in or anything. It just affects the sale of the new devices. Well, you may think, it still means that you could buy a phone with, say, an A-type charger in Britain, for example, but not Northern Ireland. There's still a difference. Only in theory, not in practice. In practice, the countries in the single market, which is almost the entire continent, buy way more mobile phones than customers in Britain. The other thing to bear in mind is that even if the UK does not mandate this change, it's not against the C-type chargers. We have them. So all that would happen is that manufacturers, who've not already, will switch to the C-type chargers. They're not going to make mobile phones with a different charging port just for the British market. There's no point. Not only would it not be worth the cost of a separate production line, but the UK rules allow the C-type. So you imagine someone at Apple going, okay, almost all of Europe will be demanding this C-type. So we'll have to make the devices with the C-type then. That's a pain in the arse because we don't like doing that, but that's what we'll have to do. Should we carry on making the other ones with the Lightning port for Britain? Why? Why would we do that? Have Britain banned the C-type? No, they haven't. Well, we'll just give them the C-type as well then. So all that'll happen is, once this rule comes into effect, which won't be for another couple of years, of course, we'll be buying mobile phones with a C-type port. In other words, the fact that we will not change our rules will make zero difference to anything. We will see shops full of mobile phones with exactly the same charging port. A huge change to the industry which comes about as a result of the EU. It's the classic King Canute situation, isn't it? We can say that we're going to do things differently. Oh, we're not going to go along with that. But the water will still lap around our ankles just the same. The Brexit media focus on the Apple phones, which I'm just going to put out there I know nothing about, presumably because they are the antithesis of harmonisation. One of the things that makes me refuse to buy Apple products is because they take pride, it seems, in making them antisocial with my other devices. Apple products are the technological equivalent of someone who crashes your party, drinks all your booze and then blocks the toilet. No doubt Apple themselves will not like this rule, but do you know what? They'll comply with it. They have to. They want to sell in Europe. Now, I guess in theory, we might end up being able to buy models without that port designed for the US market. We might be able to import it directly from the US. But why would we bother? Economies of scale mean that the high street shop and UK-based web stores will be stocking the European models with that C-type port. The Daily Mail said this, quote, This complicates things for Apple. The firm might have to make devices with USB-C ports to sell in EU countries and Northern Ireland, as well as making devices with Lightning ports to sell to the UK and other non-EU countries. That's absolute rubbish. First of all, it's not just EU countries in the single market, so other non-EU European countries would also require the C-type ports. Second, like I've already said, although the UK won't be banning their Lightning port, if that's what it's called, it's not banning the USB-C port either. So Apple will just, they're going to have a production line for the C-type anyway. They'll just do that for all their European market. It'll just change from their ports to the EU mandated one. And it's entirely possible that the munchkin that wrote this piece for the Daily Mail knows this as well. They wrote it in order to try desperately, because they're getting increasingly desperate now, to feed into the hard Brexit narrative that the EU are driving a wedge between Britain and Northern Ireland. Oh, because then we'll have this difference between Britain and Northern Ireland. No, it won't. The bottom line is you can buy the same phones in Northern Ireland as you can Britain right now, and that will still be the same after 2024 when these rules are due to come into effect. The only thing that could change is that if we decided to adopt rules that banned what the EU are saying should be the standard for their market, yeah, that would do it. That would then force manufacturers to make a different model for the GB and Northern Ireland markets, yeah. But a few thoughts on that. First, that would be us preventing some phones sold in Britain to be sellable in Northern Ireland. Secondly, it would mean that the price of mobile phones would shoot up because we're forcing manufacturers to make a production line just for the GB market. And given that there aren't as many of us as in the single market, that means economies of scale whacks the price up. Third, some models wouldn't be available because we won't buy enough of them to make it commercially viable. So even this hard Brexit government aren't stupid enough to do that. Besides, these lunatics are all about deregulation. They're hardly likely to go to all the trouble of introducing new regulations which make no sense and will exist purely to increase costs for British citizens even more and deprive them of even more choice just for the sake of spite. And if we look ahead to a significant period of time outside the single market, which I don't believe is realistic, we can expect to see more of this. Because the products we buy in Britain comply with EU standards, whether we've got those standards ourselves or not. Because when goods are produced, they're produced to the highest standard of the markets they're being sold in. So if you've got a Japanese country producing goods and it wants to use the same model to sell into Europe and America, say, it makes them to the European standards because the European standards are also meeting the standards in the US. Makes sense, easier, quicker, cheaper. If the UK wants to adopt lower standards, then EU standards are still fine. So our goods will be of EU standard, not UK standard. The only way we could ever have goods that are of UK standard, not EU standard, is to raise our standards higher than the EU. We're going the other way. We're trapped in the EU's orbit. Leaving the EU didn't change that. The difference is that while we were in the EU, that EU orbit was our orbit. We shaped it. Now we're just carried along with the tide. There's a similar orbital inevitability with production as well. We can lower our standards of production. Indeed, there are many Brexiteers who want this. The low regulation Britain to let us compete with the sweatshops of Asia. That's their vision for Brexit. But producers need to produce to the standard of their intended market. That means British producers need to maintain EU standards if they want to sell their products in the EU. And that is where most of their customers are, so of course they do. This is why we haven't just torn up all these regulations. It's why even the Daily Express were last week reporting on the folly of such a move. There is a shift right now in that people are starting to see that Brexit is not what was promised. And the longer it goes on, the more people will see for themselves. Imagine we get to 2024 and the conversation still hasn't moved on. All the new phones have got C-type chargers. People will wonder, well, if we didn't change our rules, how come there are all these C-types then? They'll be told it doesn't matter what our rules are. Goods are made to EU standards, even for the British market. So what's the point of us making our own rules if everyone ignores them and follows the EU rules? That's what the public will be asking. Good question. What was the point? But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.